Greetings, everybody. I am Kharyishi Wiginton, the Special Projects Manager for the Center for Third World Organizing, C2, and I am a member of the Whole Communities Project, where we are discussing all things liberatory leadership. And I have the blessed honor to be able to interview one of my good sister friends in the work and in life, Aisha Bilal, Falila
Yes, yes.
Aisha Bilal. And
Hello.
and I'm gonna give you an opportunity to introduce yourself. Tell us who you are, what you do.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here with you, Sister Karishi, and to be a part of this amazing process. So, my name is Falila Aisha Bilal. I am a divine spirit having this human experience. I currently work as the Deputy Director of People and Programs at the Black Organizing Project in Oakland. I also have a consultancy called Water Flow Life, where I host retreats around sacred sexuality and pleasure for women. I am a drama therapist by trade. I am a mom of two young adults, so I am stressed out pretty much every day. I am someone that has battled addictions and deals with my own mental health. I am a lover of all things green, nature, and water, and smoothies. And yeah, I am a child of the revolution. I shout out to my parents, Saisa and Rafiq, and all of the hundreds and thousands of Black folks that were part of the Black Power movement. I stand on their shoulders. Yeah, and I'm just thankful to be here. And I guess, yeah, I'm a Yankee, as my Jamaican elder would say, because I'm born in America.
I heard that. Okay, thank you. That is a lot. I love the depth. I love the way that you are able to like cohesively put together or bring together all the aspects of your identity. And ways that people would like sometimes think it's interesting. We say bring your full self to the work, but we don't
Yeah.
people don't really mean that.
Mm.
So I think some of those identities people would think are in conflict with the rest, but like, they all have lessons to teach us that inform how we get to the work and how we deal with people. So I thank you for that. Um,
Absolutely.
in your imagination, what does liberation look like, feel like, taste like?
Mm. So liberation tastes like water. It feels like water.
Mm,
When I think about what water does, how it holds us, how it's the majority of the thing that makes us up as human beings, it's the thing that we desperately right now need in the world, right? It's the thing that if you're moving too fast, you're gonna sweat. That's water. If you drink too much, right, to nourish yourself, you're gonna have to use the bathroom. That's water, right? When you're feeling good as a woman with a vagina and you in your sacred sexuality, you might squirt. That's water, right? If you're hella stressed out, depressed, can't move, you can always cry. That's water, right? So for me, liberation feels like water because it's the closest thing to our natural state. And it's also a conduit that helps move us. And so when we think about liberation, we're thinking about movement. We have a vision of what we see for our lives, whether it's economic, whether it's physical, whether it's interpersonal, whether it's political or social. We have this vision. Water is the thing that helps move us. I
mm,
think we forget when we're working in social justice agencies and we're doing the work that the movement is also what's happening right now. We
mhm.
think about liberation as something over there. When I get liberated, I'm going to be there. When I'm liberated, I'm going to do this. As opposed to you being in this journey right now is part of your liberation, like water. And
Mhm.
so for me, it tastes like water. It's clean, it's refreshing, it's moving things through. Sometimes it's like toxic. There's certain places that there's toxic water, but guess what? We still need it. I still got to drink it, and my body's going to hopefully reduce the toxicity and take the good things. Sometimes if you're swimming, you know that water can take you over. Sometimes liberation does that as well. It feels turbulent. It feels toxic. It feels like, oh my God, let me out of this water so I can get to the ground. And so for me, liberation is like water when I think about it as a physical element in my existence.
I feel that. I feel that. Can you pull your camera down some?
Yeah, down like this,
No, up, 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 up.
up like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Boom.
All
Okay.
right. Thank you.
It stays
Um,
stable.
Thank you. Uh,
Hmm.
no, I love that. And it's interesting because you were, especially when you were talking about like the female, the woman water flow sexuality parts, I was like, oh, well, there's always this place where we've been taught to have things fractioned off and like ourselves siloed. And I think it goes back to the idea of like bringing our full selves and like I am a whole being, whether
Yes.
it takes the forefront of the work or not, but I'm always Kharyishi. Like all those things are present. And when you say like liberation is today, I think part of our kind of like psychosis is that in like Western thinking is that we're not taught not to see ourselves holistically, right?
Mhm.
So I appreciate you, and I feel like you always be like, no, you a wild woman, like bring that here, like you always give
Bring
me
that here.
mhm,
Yeah,
as my elder, not by a lot but a little bit, but you
I'll
always
take it.
you always remind me to bring it present, so I appreciate.
And that's a struggle, Karishi. Like I'm with you in the struggle of integrating the different aspects of who I am. I was on a call recently with a brother named Maurice Bird. He does a lot of work in San Francisco around harm reduction. And he introduced himself by saying, "Hi, my name is Maurice. I'm someone that uses drugs. I'm someone that loves people that uses drugs. And
Mhm.
I'm someone that believes that we should not be criminalized for our use of drugs." It blew me away
Mm,
because I always introduce myself talking about my issues with addiction, but I
mm,
do it based on this diagnosis of being an addict. And so he was very clear that the use of drugs for a lot of folks of color, folks that had a lot of trauma, is actually a strength. It's their way of trying to make sense of this thing. It's
mm,
their way of trying to get free in
mhm,
the midst of all this craziness, right? And I mean, he blew me away. Like I went back and started watching all kind of videos with him talking, and he did it just like firmly. And I was like, me too. I
mhm,
love a ton of people that use drugs, right? Me
mhm,
too. I have used drugs. Yes, that was an attempt when I was a teenager, when I was doing acid in San Francisco on Hate Street. I was trying to make sense of this crazy world,
mhm,
right?
mhm.
Um, and what does it mean culturally for my people that have used substances, not just to get high, but to also get high, to
Yeah.
elevate, right? And so it's a deep conversation. Don't want to take us off track down that rabbit hole,
No,
but
no,
claiming
it's
your
true though.
identity aspects of it is hard.
It's true though. And people like Gabor Mate um,
Yes.
talk about a lot about that, um, and even my nephew. I love that you said not just to get high, but to get high, right?
Yeah.
What do those things? If we think about it in terms of sacred medicine, like ayahuasca and things like that, um,
Yes.
then it's like acceptable, right? But
Yes.
like they can have the same effects. And so my nephew's like, I was able to like really see myself and work on my self-esteem. Um, through the use of acid. So I just
Yes.
appreciate you saying that.
Absolutely.
Uh, to that end, why is it important for us to seek liberation in all that we do?
Because liberation is our natural state of being. A lot of us are humans that are doing instead of humans that are being. So when we think about liberation, free of the constraints of societal structures and societal norms, we shift, right? Like I don't have to do this job just to make this money to pay this rent, but I actually get to be because I was born to be a human being. So for
Mm,
me, liberation is just us returning to our natural state.
mm, that's right. That's right. Where do you feel most at home, and how has that changed over the years?
That's a good question. Wow, it's a complicated question too, I think, for folks that are like Black women, particularly, because we've had to mold and push ourselves and fit into a lot of places. We've gotten comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Mhm,
I find the place that I most feel connected is when I'm in nature, obviously with water, but with trees, with the earth. Um, I also am most comfortable in relationship to those that are not going to leave me or abandon me. And
mhm,
so, in social justice movements, there's a trend of cancel culture. If you say the wrong thing, then you homophobic. If you say the wrong thing, then you sexist. If you do the wrong thing one time, we firing you from this organization and you can't come to the community event. So I feel most comfortable with others when I know that I can mess up and y'all can see the ugly side of who I am and still love me. You know what I mean? And not alienate me and push me away. I think liberation is also being connected. We know that we need each other, but a lot of times we act as if people are disposable. We
mhm,
act as if we can do this thing on our own. And so liberation and the place where I'm most at home is places where people see me, the fullness of me, and they don't reject me. And if we could do that in nature, that's even like a double benefit for us,
Mm-hmm.
and I think for Mama Earth as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel that. And it's interesting because it's actually not love, right? Like
Right,
if I can't mess up, if you can't see the good, the bad, and the ugly, you actually aren't loving me.
right,
Um, and I'm clear. I just think what's hard is that we often use language like family and like, things like that. And to that end, we often replicate the toxic aspects of family in our organizations and in movement spaces. But we talk about family, which there is an underbelly of love in that. And then what does that mean if you're disposable in family? So,
right.
um,
Absolutely.
so carrying that idea of family, what does family mean to you, and who feels like family to you, and why do they?
Mm, that's a complex question. I'm not gonna call nobody out by name. Um, um, what is family to me? Family is the base. And again, it's not always a love relationship, right? It's a
Mhm,
genetic connection. It's a placeholder between the past and the future. Um, for me, I'm blessed that in my blood family, my genetic family, that there was love and there was respect and there was enjoyment and like excitement and curiosity about who we were, right? I have been blessed to work at some powerful agencies. And when we say doing the work, it changes when you are the work, right?
mhm,
So if I am the work, then I am in family relationships with anyone else that is the work. And it doesn't mean we're best friends. We talk every day. You come to my house and spend the night. It could, but it could also just mean that we have this common place where we align. And I think that that's really important. So for me, I feel comfortable and family-ish with agencies again that I have been with long term based on their mission and also the people and how they hold the work. Um,
mhm,
there's a sense of when we talk about family, there's a sense of like being home and being able to just like
mhm,
let go and just be. And it's and in some spaces just do nothing but exist.
mhm,
Um, with liberatory work, I think we forget sometimes what we're working towards is building a world where people can just exist. So we say I'm a proponent of liberation and all these things, but then if my son dates a girl that's not black, I got an issue with it. Well, why do you do diversity work and inclusion work if it doesn't mean that your family members or your children can't date whoever they want to date? It kind of doesn't
mhm,
make no sense. It doesn't mean that they hate all black women, right? It could just mean that they fell in love with somebody. And what a blessing that they're not going to get lynched,
mhm,
right? For them loving this person that has a different skin tone. um, I feel a family and a sense of kinship with women, those
mhm,
of us that have lived in this female body, those of us that have um, overcome some of the hardships that sexism and sexist culture puts on us, those
mhm,
of us that bring forth life. And I don't just mean giving birth, I mean giving birth and I mean breathing life into this world. Um, so yeah, family is, I think, what you make it. And I also think that it should be a place of home and a place of comfort.
mhm,
And in our jobs, it don't always feel like that. That's just the truth, Karishi. It just doesn't. And that's not just about the task we have to do. That's
mhm,
also about the way we are with each other,
mhm,
right? And I'm always checking myself to say, wow, was that funky? Like what I said and what I did, was that email funky? Like, well, hold on. So I can get my
mhm,
point across without harming somebody,
mhm,
right? But I have harmed people. And so what is that? What is that, right? And how am I not being like family with folks?
mhm.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think it's important that one, I think people default, and Nikita talks about a lot about like what happens when you're tight, and when people get tight, even if they have the best intentions, we often default to those things that are normal for us, and normal is often what roles and things we were taught in our families, how we communicate, how you handle stress, you know
Mhm.
what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
and a lot of those, quite frankly, can be very toxic.
Mhm.
Your primary family stuff, and how it's influenced you. And then to the point where how you named that about your son, I think, it's one thing to like dismiss somebody. Um, and things are nuanced and right, like this rubs up against this for me. And the question is, if we love each other, can we be in dialogue about it, right? Like, can we try to seek understanding? I have one of my good friends, Miss Carmel. She's super Christian. I practice E5, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a lot of difference. It's a lot of
Yes.
difference. And we love each other enough to be in dialogue and be trying to work through where are the points of difference, where are the points of connection, and more importantly, where are the points of connection, right? Because I see your heart and she sees my heart. So
Yes.
this other stuff, that's kind of like, that's just that's on the surface. Like, do we have good hearts? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, do our
Yes.
hearts make space for one another? And that's what's most important.
Yes, absolutely. Because love is a verb.
Say
It's
that.
an action.
Say
It's an
that.
action. You could tell me you love me all day, but it's an action. I can feel if you love me. I can feel the responses from my brothers right now about Kamala Harris being nominated as a vice president. I can feel that they hate Black women. I can feel it, regardless
They hate
of
their
what
mamas.
they
That's
hate. Their
what
mamas.
that it's
That's
their mama.
come on. And I was just I'm not gonna go off or down a rabbit hole, but I will say that as we are studying the impact of the crack cocaine epidemic,
Mhm.
that was the first time in American history where you saw the Black woman on her knees. And I'm talking about slavery too. Okay.
Mhm.
But with heroin, Black women were still the glue that was holding the family together. Even in slavery, with everything we was going through, we was the glue when it came to sharecropping, when it came to the 1920s, the 30s. But crack cocaine hit Black women in such a way that we have a lot of grown Black men who were sons of mothers that did crack, that they have this hate, which means that they actually had this love, that they actually had this belief in,
Uh,
right?
yeah, it's
It
two sides
goes
to the same
together.
coin.
It's two-sided. But
Mhm.
I feel this hate that's coming up out of and particularly our leftist, liberatory, progressive movement folks
Mhm.
against Kamala. And you can have that, but how does it show up? And how do you move with that in a way? What are you actually really saying? And the people that are going to be the most damaged by that are these little Black girls in schools, these little Black girls on buses, these little Black girls going to amusement parks and to the movies, where men, because they have seen Black men disrespect Black women, are like, I'm gonna disrespect her.
Mhm.
Right? If y'all could do that, it's deep, girl. It's so anyway, I know that's not part of the question, but love is a
Nope.
verb. And I
No, but
like, yeah.
it's important. I seen this post on Instagram that was like from some black, I can't think of the organization, but it was like a black woman serving organization. And the post was just like, sis, over these next few months, I want you to love yourself. I want you
Mhm.
to like deepen self-care because you're going to hear a lot of things that are going to make you doubt your greatness. They're going to make you doubt your worth. Like, and it was very clear that it wasn't about just her, that it was
Yes.
going to be about us, right?
Yes, absolutely. And it's deep because the brothers that I know that are doing this, that I love that are doing this, and I say to them, "How can you do this?" And they're like, "Well, I'm not saying I support Trump, but you ain't never put no meme up with Trump raping a little boy. But you know for a fact that he's done that. You know for a fact that he's a pedophile, right? And that he rapes little boys and little girls. But I don't see no meme of that. Like
It's
you're not putting that out there. It's interesting. Like how could this be okay, right?
mm,
But you're not doing this other thing. So
mm,
love is a verb. Let's get active, y'all. Let's get
mm.
loving.
And when you are when you are like, I might not be intentionally doing something, but it in the inaction or the inaction or the unintentional thing is still an intention, right? Like the
Absolutely.
still in action. So deepening that, like going even further, like how does, because you talked about love being a verb and that connected to family, how does family influence your leadership practice? And in what ways?
I'm smiling because I feel like I was really blessed to be born into the family that I was born into, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
when people meet me or in the work, they're like, "Oh my God, you've done all this stuff." I'm like, I ain't done nothing in comparison to what my mom and my daddy did. So
Mm-hmm.
my blood family, their active participation in the Black Power movement, in becoming Muslim, the sacrifices that that generation made is so profound. And so for me, that is how, for me, that's what my family brings to it. So my family has vetted me in the work in some ways because I'm a child of that movement. Um, my family had demonstrated unconditional love for me throughout all the trials and tribulations of my particular life, my particular kind of human experience.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that wasn't, they didn't lower their standards for me. There was still a standard that my family wanted me to actually achieve, right? But when I didn't reach those places, they still said, "We see you. We know you're struggling right now with this. And maybe one day you can choose to do something else."
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's that foundation. And I think it's important for us to acknowledge it and to recognize that we all stand on the shoulders of greatness. Like, how did we, as Africans, brought to America and been enslaved longer than we've been so called free in this country? How have we achieved so many things under such ridiculous, barbaric, crazy stuff? We still are like the talented 10th. We still are at the top of the thing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what? It trips me out. And like, we struggling right now. Like, I'm struggling living in my house with shoes on my feet, with water and lemon to drink, with nobody whipping my back. We're like, what? You know what I mean? Like, so when I think about the larger kind of, Black American family, or
Mm-hmm.
even the human experience, how are we able to do and overachieve and come through so much? And every generation we do it. Every generation. We
Mm-hmm.
keep doing it, even in the midst of all of this.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
it's powerful. So the strength of family is it's immeasurable. Um it's something that I think a lot of times for us that are like African or Black skinned people, we take for granted
Mm-hmm.
because we know it's always available to us, that genetic brilliance. And then we treat each other funky, right? But we forget that we have other options at times.
What like how does that is it reflected in your particular leadership style?
Oh,
Like
okay, yes.
because of that,
So
then how do you like
yes. So I like to lead from a place of like centering the healing.
mm-hmm.
Like, what does it mean for us to heal? So I guess you would call it a healing centered approach. I went into therapy for that reason because of my issues with Western psychological thought and theory and practice. I went into that field because I knew it was necessary for me to be there for the brown and Black folks that were going to come through that system. And so my approach is definitely a healing centered approach,
Mm-hmm.
um, and which we know grows out of the reducing trauma or trauma informed field.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that people are born with gifts, regardless of their circumstances. And my job as a mentor, as a director, as a supervisor is to help folks see their gifts,
Mm-hmm.
create a place where people can reflect, where they can fumble, where they can excel, so that they can find their gifts. And I think that in empowering one or a group, you actually empower all of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I appreciate that. I love all of the things that you were saying about your family and even just like that dynamism of Black people, right? Like what we're able to like do even despite whatever circumstances that we've had to transgress. Uh if you expanding on that, like is there a central value, idea, or community that's at the core of your work?
Yeah, Black folks with trauma. It's pretty
Mm,
simple. It used to be female identified or women. I've done a lot of work with girls
mm,
for years, but I love the boys just the same as I love the girls. You know what I mean? And there's moments sometimes where I love the boys more than I love the girls
mm,
because it's an energetic thing, right? But it's
mhm,
Black folks, it's melanated people. That's been my core. It's been where I've worked my entire career.
mhm,
I was blessed as a teenager to be brought into an organization called the Black Women's Health Project. And we did these amazing retreats in the Bay Area. This is like the mid 80s, called the Black and Female. And so that was like the foundation of the work I do, that it was about kind of healing. It was about our interconnectedness. And so that has been at the root of my work, my whole career, actually.
That's where Rashida used to work, right?
Yes. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And she was one of the mamas, young, doing it. And I was a girl. And yeah. And she was like, I remember you. What? You still doing this work? And I was like, yes, mama. Yes, I am. Right. So again, a testimony to the interconnectedness of all of us. I'm sure when she was planting those seeds, she didn't think 40 years later, right, that where would this work live? She was doing it present in the moment,
Mm-hmm.
as all the sisters were trying to find their own peace, right?
Yeah.
And but they were dropping these jewels. So I pray and hope that, the young women that we serve and we work with, that they are picking up that energy as well. Because
Oh,
they got some things that they confronting.
oh, definitely. I talked to there's some that are like really core in my life still. But even I know that, we're planting seeds. I've always held that idea that we're planting seeds and that I might, I'm not the everything, right? I might plant the seed. You might come and give it some sun. Somebody else comes and give it some water. Some of those seeds aren't even on lands that I live on anymore. I might not even know those young people anymore, but I know that those seeds didn't go, they didn't fall to the wayside, right? Like they're taking root in some ways. And then there's some that are in my life presently, and then I get to see like, oh, okay, all right. Like I get
Yep.
to watch those come to fruition. So um building on that, I love how all these questions like shout out to our team that put the questions together. I like how they build on each other. Um can you share a tool or a resource that you have that kind of helps you operationalize your values? Like
Hmm. That's a
um
good question. Say the question again. Repeat the question.
can you share a tool or a resource that helps you operationalize your values?
So what first comes to mind is going to sound kind of hippie-ish, but like breath
Mhm,
as a tool and a resource, especially when
mhm,
I'm annoyed with somebody and I want to check
mhm,
them and I want them to get it or whatever.
mhm,
Taking a breath. I know
mhm.
that seems silly, but it's pretty profound just to help. Um, breath, breath work. I'm gonna stay there. That's the tool that we have
Why?
life inside of us.
Yeah. Can you say a little bit more like why breath would be like I
Because what it does is it gives you a chance to take in what's being given and then push out. Like it gives you a chance to reflect, it gives you a chance to pause, it gives you a chance to sense what's happening, whether it's what's our next strategic move, right? What is the appropriate thing to say in this moment? So a resource for those of us that are like part of the executive team at nonprofits is to take a pause and actually breathe. Um, it also reminds us that we are alive, and in that anything is possible. And so again, I know it sounds really hippy dippy out there in the ethers of whatever, but when I have taken a breath before I have responded in difficult dynamics, I've actually had a better response. I also think that it is something that is so universal. So it's a tool that any of us human beings can access. It ain't just for Black folks doing liberatory work. It's also for white folks, right? It's also for, um, it's for the men, it's for the women, it's for the non-binary folks. It's something that's easy accessible. It doesn't cost nothing to breathe, right? Um, so anyone can access it as a
Mhm,
tool to like, let's just stop and take some breaths, y'all. Let's
mhm,
just reground ourselves and then let's move from that place. A friend of mine's recently posted something about a list of songs. It was 102 songs that were written about police brutality and the police history of killing Black folks. And it was all about, why would you do this? It was all these different songs. And like 30 of them had breath in the title. He wants to breathe. Let us breathe. And I was like, this is deep, right? Just to
mhm.
have the capacity to just be.
To breathe. Mhm. That's such a basic living element because even the earth breathes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Animals, plants, right? Like
Tree.
all of it is something that's universal. Trees,
Mhm.
it's a universal thing.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Oh shoot, these questions. What are you dedicated to making happen in the world? And how does that influence your sense of home? Or how does
Hmm.
your sense of home influence that? That's really what it is. So what are
I'm
you committed to making happen in the world, and how does your sense of home influence that?
well, I want my home to be a place of love. For
Mhm,
me as a child, my home was a place of love. I was blessed. Not to say there wasn't problems and there wasn't issues, because definitely there were.
mhm,
But it was a place, that place that we talked about, the coming home and having family and just being able to relax. So in the world, that's what I want to bring. Like, I want to bring a sense of I am okay, I am worthy, I am enough, I am powerful, right?
mhm,
Um, if I have had trauma, which most of us have, I can heal and I can have joy. And so I'm dedicated to being love in action. And that is not an easy thing to do. But in practicing it as a verb, it becomes my go to, even when I'm harmed. And I
mhm,
don't say this from a perspective like turn the other cheek. I know, again, in our political and social justice work, we have a lot of divisions. But I think if we, as folks that are committed to liberation, can find the places where we have alignment and just rest there for a generation
mhm,
and not let the things that divide us separate our efforts, we're more impactful.
mhm.
Um, so yeah, I'm committed to being love in action. Um, I'm committed to allowing folks I am in community with to know that I see them, that I love them. That doesn't mean I always like them, and that's real, but I do love them.
Mhm.
And I want us all to have a sense of home, to have a sense of comfort.
I heard that. I had to tell somebody I was supervising before he thought that I didn't like him. And I was like, I don't have to like, who cares if I like you? I'm committed to you.
Right.
I'm invested in helping you grow, which is quite frankly much better than liking you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot of people out here just being like really sanitized and nice, having a lot of niceties, but like there's no deeper commitment to you. Don't let me be out here just doing wrong. Like, don't let me
Right.
be out here uh,
Right.
losing my mind. Like, love me enough to get me right. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Absolutely.
Because then you're invested in my spirit, you're invested in my overall being, and that is so much stronger than being nice or like
Yes.
me, right?
Yes.
Maybe that's
And
it.
niceness is different than being kind. Like, you can be kind and be gentle
Mm-hmm,
and still, like, and that's not necessarily I'm just trying to be nice for the sake of being nice, right? And
mm-hmm,
so it is very interesting how that shows up. And you will see that when someone is like off work, when they're not doing social justice work, how do they treat the people at the grocery store? Right? How do they talk to their
oh,
kids at
that,
home? You know what I mean?
say that.
How do they deal with the people that call them on the phone and they are a service worker calling from PG&E? Like, are you nice then? Are you kind then? Or are you back to being like, y'all MFers better not, like, what is happening here?
Mm-hmm,
Um, and and so again, this is our work. This is actually the work. And I think it's also why we, as Black folks, as Africans and American, we are the medicine for the world, because even with everything that we've gone through, we still have so much joy and
mm-hmm,
so much kindness
mm-hmm,
because of who we are destined to be, right?
mm-hmm.
And who we are, that we're like, even as women, we're not going to turn around and do the things to men that men have done to us. It's not even in our nature. I'm not even thinking about that. Like, what?
Well,
You know what I mean?
it's interesting that you say that. Well, when I was thinking like, oh, you know how Bob says, rude, not too rude, dread,
Yeah.
kinky, dread, I are the root. Um,
Yes.
but I think I do have some pushback. One of the things and maybe some of this is not who I am in my being, but how we've internalized the junk such that like, you know, toxic masculinity and patriarchy are big
Mhm.
topics right now in the world.
Mhm.
But just because you are female assigned at birth, or you have a womb, or you are non-binary, does not mean that you are not practicing toxic masculinity or patriarchy, right? But I think it
Yes.
goes to that thing that you're talking about like the kindness versus the niceties, right? How are you actually in the world with people? How are you holding people? Not outwardly facing, not like this, not in the
Yes.
ways, but in the ways that actually count, where people aren't assessing, really, people aren't doing their own work. We have assessments of power out externally, but we are not assessing power internally,
It's
right?
true. It's
And a
true.
lot of that is embedded in your family junk. Like, how did your family teach you about how to hold power?
It's true. Without a doubt. And again, I think a lot about slavery. I read all these narratives like in my downtime, which I know sounds weird, but I just wonder, how did my folks make it through?
Hmm.
How did they make it through
Hmm.
and still convey love, to have your baby ripped out of your arms and sold away from you
Hmm.
repeatedly,
Hmm.
repeatedly? And
Hmm.
then you go back, and for the children that are with you, or the children that are in your community, you still give them hugs. You still give them a piece of bread. Like, what? The divine part of you still rises up, even no matter the human condition. And I'm gonna be honest, and I'll say this, and you can bleep it out or keep it. But I think that's why the large collective of whiteness, of racists, I think that's why they're so upset, actually, because they keep instituting and executing all these toxic things,
and
and
it's
we
not
still
changing.
are loved.
Yes, it's not changing that.
It's not changing. We still love. We won each generation. Yeah, you can come in and bomb our all black towns and blah blah blah. We
Mhm,
still gonna rebuild community. Yeah, you can
mhm,
make these laws for an ounce of marijuana or a certain amount of crack cocaine. I gotta spend 20 years in prison, and guess what? My wife is still gonna rock with me, and my kids, I'm doing homework with them over the phone. Like, what? Like, you lose. You've lost. We've actually
mhm.
won. You have not stripped us of our humanity. We actually are the human gauge for the world. So anyway, let me
It's
not go down
interesting.
that. But
No, I appreciate that. It's interesting that you say that. One of the shows that there's certain movies that I can just watch like a million times. Like I can watch the original Color Purple like over and over again and have no
me
problem.
too.
But I know people are like, that's too traumatic. But it's not like that for me. But I can also do the same with The Help, and people have a lot of critique of The Help, but I really like The Help.
I
And
love the help.
but I think that what you're talking about is embedded in it, like, and they name it like we raise these children who love us, who we are essentially in the role of mother for them, right?
Yes.
And they love us, they hug us, they kiss all these things, and then they grow up at a certain point, and then they it shifts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how they see us and treat us, which
Mm-hmm.
what you would think is actually if we are if we are rearing these children and they love and they respect us so much as kids, that should shift how they are with us as adults, right? That's
Right.
actually the best medicine, but it doesn't. Like you understand.
Yeah, I totally get it. And be clear, like movies like The Help and other movies that really reveal the toxicity of this racist structure, white folks knew who we were.
Mhm,
Let's be clear.
mhm.
Okay? They knew who
Back,
we were.
back, 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 back,
Back,
back.
back, 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 back. That's why they could
The
say
bricks
you're
back.
yeah, that's why they say you're less than an animal, but take my child and breastfeed her. Or
Mhm,
what? But you don't know who I am?
mhm,
Please. You
mhm,
want me to forget who I am. I think the
mhm.
greatest weapon we have is knowledge of self. And that doesn't mean you have to work in a social justice agency, or you got to have natural hair, or you got to be politically correct or whatever. But this idea of knowing kind of who you are is the most powerful weapon I think that we have in terms of
That's what Steve
liberation.
Biko said. Steve Biko said the most uh, valuable tool in the hands of the oppressor is the minds of the oppressed, right? And so,
Yes. Yes.
like the clearer we are about who we, and to me, that's really when I think about like my role in social justice. At the core, it's empowerment, right? At
Yes.
the core, it's helping people unlock the gifts and the talents and the personal power that they have inside, and then
Mm-hmm.
allowing them so that they can direct their own lives. I don't want you to be
Mm-hmm.
who I want you to be. I want you to be clear. Even if you make it a wild choice, even if your choice is something that I would never make, that is completely wild and not connected to my values, you're making it from a very clear and empowered stance as opposed to replicating or doing something that is expected of you.
Absolutely.
All right, I got
I
one last
should.
question.
All right.
We could just be talking.
We could just talk and talk. Yes.
The last question is, in times of overwhelming grief, conflict, and stress, what tools do you use to recenter and come back to come back home to yourself?
So I spend time in nature, and I'm getting over being a city girl, so being scared of being in nature. It's funny
Mhm,
to be in nature and be like, it's too quiet, but I could live in a place where there's bullets flying through my window. So I'm saying
mhm,
that literally,
mhm.
right?
No, no, no.
Um,
I know
yeah,
where you live.
yeah,
Literally.
yeah. So it's like, so I use nature as a way to ground because I know that Mama Earth can hold. I love to speak my truth. I have friends that I'll call and they'll say, well, what do you need right now? And
Mhm,
I'll say, I just need to vent. I don't need no advice. I don't need to be fixed. I just need to get it out. So I do believe that a tool, speaking the truth, is a valuable tool.
mm,
I believe in crying when it comes to sadness and when it comes to joy. I believe in rest.
mhm,
I believe in all the human things that human beings need in order to sustain severe times of stress and grief and trauma.
mm,
None of this is new. I'm not the first person to say it. God willing, I won't be the last. But the tools, anything that brings us back to the core of who we are, which is that inner child that's inside of us, that elder, if we're
mm,
lucky to live and to become an elder,
mm,
I those are the tools that I use. And in using those tools, now I'm 51, right? So I was taught these tools at 14. Now
mm,
I get to teach them to others, right?
mm,
And I get to see the places in my life where when I have been traumatized, where I haven't actually used them, and how deeply or how much deeper I fell into the trauma, the grief, the pain. So I think it's important to express it. I think we have to get back to collective expressions of grief.
mhm,
Um, I think that um, we have to recognize when we are the ones holding those spaces that is not for us to fix it. And there's a fixing that's happening when we just hold that space.
mm,
And then I believe in the other tools. I believe in therapy. I believe in, if you needed medication, like all of this stuff is medicine or lack of medicine, right? So, like when I
mhm,
was younger, as a therapist, I was telling, I don't, we don't need these psych meds. I don't know if I would say that now. Some people might need psych meds for a period of time to come out of depression, right? And so I believe mostly that the person that is experiencing the grief, the trauma, the fatigue needs to lead whatever their treatment is. I believe that children as well, have agency to say, here's the kind of help I need.
mhm,
And so a lot of times for us as social justice folks that do this work or nonprofit executives or whatever we call ourselves, it's hard for us to humble ourselves enough for someone to say, like, this is actually what I need to
mm,
get better, you
mm,
know?
mhm.
Um, so I think that's part of our work.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think as you were talking, I was definitely like therapy, therapy, therapy. And
Hmm.
especially if you are the one holding in your family, in
Yes,
your organization, in your
yes,
community, if you play that role, it is actually counterproductive for you to not be doing therapy. And
yep.
and so much of this is my little soapbox moment. But one of the things
Come
I've been
on.
thinking about is people do therapy wrong. And I've been realizing this lately. Like, because I know a lot of people who've been in therapy for a long time. And I'm like, how have you been in therapy that long and you're still holding the same issues, right?
Right,
Like, how do we see the evidence of the work in your
right.
behavior, in your consciousness, right? Like, people should be able to experience your transformation, right?
Yep,
And then I
yep.
realized, oh, you think that you're supposed to go to therapy, even like in people's critique of therapy, right? They think that they're supposed to go to therapy and that person is going to fix them, that your
Boom.
therapist brings the thing. And I'm like, no, actually, I'm guiding and directing my therapy. I could not
Yep,
talk. I could
yep.
not talk about the right thing. When I talk to my young people, I'm like, are you bringing that up in therapy? I just had this conversation with one of my students the other day. Do you bring that up in therapy? And she's like, no. And how, how is that? This thing that you're telling me that seems to be, because in you talking about this one thing, now you've named like 5 or 6 different ways that
Yep,
it had like spinoffs, right?
yep.
How is this thing that seems to be so core of an example when I hear it, you ain't bringing it to your therapist?
Yep.
Oh, oh, you don't know how to do this thing that you're doing, right?
And the therapist doesn't know how to create a space for your expression. One thing that therapists really struggle with is silence. As a
Mm-hmm.
therapist, having a session with someone and you just come in and you saying, "How are you?" and then just letting that person talk or not talk.
Mm-hmm.
Does the therapist then want to fill the space with a bunch of words, with a bunch of strategies, with some handouts, with some with all of that? Or is a therapist able to sit and see this person and just be with this person and let them, as you said, share, express, and dictate how this thing flows, right? Like when I do therapy with people, and I haven't worked with individual clients in a really long time, just ongoing. But in the past, when I have, my first session is I'm not going to heal you. You're going to heal you. My job is to hold the space for you to experiment with what
Mm-hmm.
healing looks like, feels like, sounds like, tastes like. That's my
Mm-hmm.
job. But the
Mm-hmm.
work is yours to do for you. I can reflect because we are in community, right?
Mm-hmm.
But my job is to hold this space, right? And
Yeah.
so that is a hard place for a lot of therapists to be in because we think, I know these theories, I got this psychological thought process, and I know what you need to be better. Huh?
Mm. I would say
Wow.
I would say the being okay with silence, but I would also say being knowing how to ask the questions that
Mm-hmm.
are leading questions or that are opening the pathways to my self investigation.
Yes.
Like what are those things, right?
Yeah.
That are helping me kind of like take my own temperature. Oh, is there a there? Is there something there? Like, what's
Yep.
hiding? What's behind this door? What's hiding
Yep.
under this table? Like, and
Yep.
allowing me to do that. So this has
And
been
I
really
think that oh, sorry, I was just gonna say one thing. When we get to this thing of liberation that we're all seeking, that I'm already living. I feel liberated right now talking to you, being able to have this platform, right? But as we move into liberation, um, what is it that we know to be true about the restraints of the culture as this culture shifts? This is why we're so important as social justice folks. As this culture shifts, the need for things like therapy
mm,
ideally should be reducing,
mm-hmm,
right? Meaning like folks don't need to be in their individual therapy as much because we have a collective process that we are experiencing that helps us become whole, right?
mm,
And that's not to say there's not going to be sadness, there's not going to be trauma, but there is going to be a place, a container for us to hold this. So as we see our community shift, as we see this world shift, we should also see a shift in the amount of mental health that folks are experiencing. I think mental health problems are indicators that this world is off, that this thing is off and we need to put it back on, right?
mm-hmm.
So I think there'll be a deep connection between that.
Definitely, as you're talking, I'm thinking we need to be working our ways out of jobs, and
Yes.
people are trying to keep their jobs. No, no, no,
Right.
no, no.
Right.
I remember
Right.
several years ago in Oakland having a conversation at the public health department. Was my work was with public health, and at that point, the number one and number two of public health were both Black folks. And at the same
Right.
time, those people are telling me that Black folks in Oakland are leading 54 out of 57 health indicators. And I'm
Come
like,
on.
how is that possible? It makes no sense to me.
Yep.
It is the
These
work
things
we're
don't go
doing.
together.
No, no.
Right.
If this department, if this entity is primarily non-Black,
Yep.
I could see that. But we're
Yep.
saying the one and number two are the leads. That's not even accounting for all the directors and coordinators and people all up and through that agency that are Black folks working in Oakland on public health. What are you
Right.
doing to impact that? And what are your measurements to see if you've achieved it? Because there's
Yeah.
something that's off. Something ain't working.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
well, all
Wow,
right.
Kharyishi. Well, this has been a wonderful conversation. I'm so grateful and honored that y'all would bring me in to be a part of this series. I'm so thankful that I can share my thoughts, my feelings, my experiences, my heart with everyone. And I'm just appreciative. You know, I am because we are, man. We need each other very deeply.
Definitely. And just so you know, you were a no-brainer for us. Like, not just because of who you are and what you do in the world, and definitely being a liberatory leader in that way, but are like one of a few people that really hits all of our categories, right? From being a praxis coach, to being a part of the what do you call it with you're a part of leadership learning communities through
Yes.
COP and that work that you're doing. You're
Yes.
also a part of like what's Holly and you're one of the liberatory coaches.
Yes.
What is their
Hmm.
org? I don't know why I'm drawing a blank right now. But you know, all of the whole community projects, um,
Wonderful.
entities, you hit all of those areas, and so we really just
Thank you.
appreciate your work.
Thank you. I
Leaders
appreciate
Trust,
that.
Leaders Trust. I didn't want to blank.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, you're one of Leaders Trust liberatory coaches, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so you've hit all of our areas, like you continue to be deep in our ecosystem. So we appreciate you.
Well, I needed this call today. I needed to be thinking about these things and to remind myself. Like I said, I have two young adult children. And
Mhm.
so sometimes in the midst of parenting, like I needed to be reminded that this life that I've lived is, I know it's with purpose, but there are moments where you're like, what is happening? So this was right on time for me personally. Thank you so much.
I feel that. Thank you.
Hmm.
Stop recording now.